Hello and welcome to Master Manual, a practical guide for DMs, GMs, and just wanna BMs, as well as other folks too. This is a podcast where we talk about and answer questions regarding role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, mostly from a Dungeons Master's perspective. I'm Spencer Crittenden, I'm driving, and I'm here with my buddy.
Hey, I'm Cohen Edenfield. I'm in the passenger seat. From a Fury Road perspective, I am the guy who is in the passenger seat. I guess that makes me Max, actually. Well, he drives some. They go back and forth. It's a real partnership.
You kind of have, like, in that world, I assume you have to drive. Like, you can't not at some level.
Well, they're in the rig for the most of the movie, for a lot of the movie, as she's driving. But I think at a certain point, he's driving. They go back and forth.
But I just mean like that's got to be one of the few skills that even exists.
Oh yeah, you need if you're gonna
fighting and driving.
Yeah. Although I guess there is a whole underclass, which is sort of the thrust of that movie.
Right, of like Rot Farm or whatever.
Or well, I mean like the people who are like starving and need water and stuff. Like they probably aren't like peeling it. It's not a peel out summer for them
because they didn't learn how to drive.
Yeah, they're too thirsty to drive.
So, I just want to say this because I have a podcast, and that's what else do you do other than vent unneeded spleen? No, not spleen. I don't know. You know that movie Us, the Jordan Peele movie?
No. Well,
have you seen the trailer?
Tell me about it.
Okay. In the trailer, there's a family, and they're black, and I don't think that's important, but it's important to the point I'm going to be making later. But then they just find a doppelganger family of like weird murderers, and so it's them. They see them, and then them is trying to kill them. You know?
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah, and so I saw it, and I was like, wow, what a great movie. And then it just sat with me for a long time, and then just the other day I was like, wait a second, this is about being black, because that's what white people see black people as just these doppelgangers of humans that are just vicious, not all white people, but racist. That's like the racist view of black people that like pervades law enforcement, is the idea that any citizen could just be this murderous monster who's unhinged and just kind of appears normal to the bystander who's not, seeing with this true eye,
Yeah.
That's all. You didn't see the trailer.
I didn't see the trailer. I can't comment.
Right.
I pray that your interpretation of this trailer is insightful and all that stuff. I assume it is.
It's just the thought. I mean, because, obviously he did, what was the other movie?
Get Out, which I have not seen, which I've been meaning to see for like 3 years. It's one of those where it's like, you know what? I'm going to watch it tonight.
I want to watch it.
Place for myself. Yeah.
But that was also, it wasn't like about that, but it just like that was like a theme kind of somewhat, or no, it was more about that maybe than Us, actually. I didn't see either. So I should shut up. How's it going? Maybe we'll cut this out.
I've been doing a lot of dungeon mastering.
Hell yeah. You want to talk about that?
Let's. Okay, so last time we met, I think last time we recorded was like my I'm so tired episode, right? Was that literally the last time we recorded?
Yeah, I think.
Oh god, yeah. So the next day, I couldn't get out of bed.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I actually had to call into work because I was just so I was basically having it is I think I talked about it on the show, but it is autistic burnout. It is a thing that happens sometimes when you just can't. And luckily I'm in a position now where I have accrued a lot of goodwill at my job, and it is a job that respects me as a human being. And I was basically like, I can't do this, and my boss was like, take a day, you've been working really hard.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I just real quick, I almost never have taken a sick day because I was actually sick. I've only ever used sick days or called out, quote, sick because I felt mentally bad, and I don't think I've ever, not like I come to work sick or whatever, it's just never happened that way. So
I know what you mean. It's like you can usually make it till the weekend or whatever if you're actually sick. So the upshot is, though, I read that book you sent me. You were nice.
Oh, really?
Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master.
I didn't even want to ask because I was dreading that you might say no.
Incredible.
Okay.
Like it was so. At first, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then, like, the longer I read it, it's not very long.
No, it's about a 20-minute read.
Yeah. I didn't read all the tables and everything, although I'm gonna use those as reference. I kind of just wanted to there's a minion peeking up over that building.
Oh yeah, we're approaching Universal Studios Hollywood.
That's why. Oh, right, we are.
Yes, we
so
are.
it was so good, and I was like, is this okay? How do I apply this to Horde of the Dragon Queen?
Right.
Which I've been talking about that I was going to run for about, I think, pretty much the duration of this podcast.
Yeah, that was also my take when I read it, was like, how do I apply this to pre-prepared content? Because it doesn't talk about it, but it almost implies that there's the perfect synergy to be had.
I think what he says is basically like, I think the thing he doesn't want to come right out and say is pre-prepared. Well, he does say pre-prepared content is often much more work than no content at all.
Right.
And I was like, surely there's no way. And then I thought about like the work I've been doing. I've been committing myself to reading both of these books because I know that like there's graphs and charts at the end of the second book that's like, oh, if they did this, then they get these points, which means these people support them at this council. And
so
it's like
2 books?
Yeah, it's Horde of the Dragon Queen and then something Rise of Tiamat. Mm-hmm. Although, and it just I just kept struggling with it, and I was like, you know what? Like I was trying to make like literally the first adventure, the first thing work. I was like, I mean, I know that Kobold Press did the first book while they were still playtesting the rules, and like that stuff wasn't finished, and so it's like, I mean, that book came out before the Dungeon Master's Guide, I think.
Right. So just mechanically, it might be
it is
prototypical,
kind of unrunnable. Like the first encounter, the first thing that happens is that your party, which is recommended 4 to 5 level 1, runs into a party of 6 kobolds,
right,
who are killing a family, and it's like, okay, I guess we're going to, and like the kobolds don't attack them, and it's like, I guess they'll fight the kobolds, but then like the thing about 6 kobolds is pretty decent odds they might actually all go before your players,
right,
and B, kobolds have pack tactics, which means they have advantage on attack rolls.
Pack tactics is so great,
and they're all
not at level 1.
Not at level 1 against 6 opponents. So like, there's a very, very real chance of your play. Like, I think that's why they had to add in the kobolds don't just automatically attack.
Right.
Spencer in meanderingly driving around has almost taken us directly into Universal Studios.
And I almost got us in 2 separate car crashes.
No.
Well, I just did. You just might not have been paying as much attention as me.
I was paying attention.
Okay.
But I think we're in the clear.
I did okay.
Oh, look at that nice vista we have now.
Yeah.
It's very pretty.
I think I was supposed to turn this way and then it'll take you down the hill. Anyway.
So like, there's a very real chance of the party wiping.
Right.
Like, if like one person gets to go before the kobolds and antagonizes them, then the kobolds have a very real chance of killing your entire party on like the first thing that happens. Also, like it describes the party as arriving like from outside the city, and the city is already on fire and being attacked by cultists and a dragon.
Damn.
like an adult blue dragon. And I was like, why would they get involved with this? Why on earth wouldn't you just leave? Like, I feel like
that was my thought. Yeah,
there's a presumption that heroes and I see this for sure when I like cruise around on like, because I've done a lot more like reading about like just like random like Googling an idea, like how do you deal with lycanthropy, and then you know how you'll see other people giving you glimpses of what they think the game is like.
Right.
They're like, well, if the character has like lycanthropy, then they're chaotic evil now, which means they're going to be murdering everyone they see, and the rest of the party who's good is going to be trying to kill them. And if they're not doing that, then they're not playing their characters, so you should take their character sheets. And I was like, what a nightmare to be this person. Just like literally Googling lycanthropy.
Yeah, right.
That it's like, but like sometimes people will give you glimpses that I was like, there are people who think of this game as like your characters are heroes and thus they must act heroically and are compelled to rush into this. I feel like you have to give adventurers players some kind of a buy-in, a hook. You know, so I ended up the night before, like literally the night before we were going to play, I was like, you know what? I've read this Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master.
Hell yeah.
And I'm just gonna throw everything I have out and start over.
Uh-huh.
So I had a very
So wait. Run me through the timeline of this. You had a session with that opening encounter?
No. I kept reading it and being like, I don't know how to make this work.
This was before your session.
This is before the session.
Okay.
This was like the thing that kept causing me to push starting this campaign off. Was like, I don't know how to make this shit work. I don't know how to make this playable. And I know these. The whole point of this campaign that I'm running is it's my 2 roommates, my girlfriend, and one other friend who is already friends with the other people. So like, the cost of us playing is that one friend coming over because my girlfriend and roommates are already going to be there. Mm-hmm. So it's like I know these people really well. I know that they are not going to be engaged by this content. So I kept trying to shape it and like, how do I keep the framework? And I was like, wait, I could just do my own adventure about Tiamat. I don't actually have to use any of this.
Yeah.
So I threw it all out at like 1 a.m. the night before, and I wrote down on a note card,
the lazy DM guide recommends note cards.
Yeah, I wrote down on a note card right before I fall asleep. They wake up in prison in an agrarian town. They have to get their stuff has been taken. And that was what I had. And then the next day at work, I just like I have downtime every now and pretty often in my job because like my job is that I do subtitling and dubbing instructions for TV shows and movies that are going to come out in the next 6 months to a year or so. Usually less. It's a tighter turnaround, but I'm getting episodes coming down the pipe. I do my job, and then like I got to wait for more to come down the pipe.
Right.
So I'll have time to work. It's great. It's super good for DMing. So I'm just sitting there, and I had walked over the day before to Target on my break, and I'd bought like this 3-pack of these like thin moleskin notebooks with kind of like crummy. They're not as nice.
Yeah, they come in 3-packs. They're a lot cheaper. They're not super cheap, but they're really useful for having multiple books. Because usually, if you get a notebook, you get about halfway through it, and then you kind of stop using it.
Well, that's the thing, and I have that like paralysis of not wanting to start because I'm like, this is such a nice notebook. I got to make sure it only gets my best ideas.
Mm-hmm. And you put everything in the right spot, and you don't like use the pages the wrong way.
Yeah, and then I just started writing, and I wrote down like location. This is the town of Haymaker.
I'm seeing a little picture, and it says Session 1.
Yeah, it says Session 1. It says small farming town situated on a large hill and endless sprawling wheat fields. And then in parentheses, bright wheat. And then I wrote down, okay, we got a 5-bladed windmill. One of the blades is much newer. It causes the windmill to run faster, but shake when the winds are strong. And I wrote down on another page, I wrote down like 3 locations. We got the windmill, we got the counting house, which has been converted into the prison, which is where they wake up. Mm-hmm. And there's the Temple of Kalimvor, which is it's the abandoned temple of a faith that was driven out of town by this new charismatic faith leader who's the head of this faith called the Church of the Fifth Season. Mm-hmm. And the idea I had was that I wanted to have a villain who was a revivalist preacher and who was like preaching because I was like, I bet I can do that off the cuff pretty good.
Right.
And so they wake up. There's this monk who was also been arrested, and he's like, hey, Kalimvor used to be a faith here, and then we used to have a priest here, but he used to send us letters, and now we hadn't gotten letters in a while, so I showed up to see what the deal was, and I can't find him, and then they arrested me. Mm-hmm. So he's there basically because he as a gentle guide potentially, and also as a cleric he can do healing. So this is all I have is that I've got these 3 locations.
Right.
I've got 3 factions, which is like this kind of fallen faith of Kalimvor that nobody is practicing in this town anymore. This weird agrarian new faith, and the villainous faction that is off to the side that they don't know about yet.
Right.
And I don't want to talk about in case any of them listen to this.
Sure.
So it ended up being really, all I knew was, so I sent them a text. I sent a group text that morning with some florid, you've woken up in endless, the salt, the air coming in off the sea chills you even as the bright sun beats down on your shoulders, that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of stuff they put in the pre-prepared stuff and tell you to read.
Right.
But there's only about like three or 4 pages worth of that in like a 70-page in like 8 weeks. So it's this super weird thing where it's like, I guess you're just you're having to make up most of it, but occasionally you'll read like a paragraph of weird prose.
So what about your character?
So there's this character who appears at the end of the first adventure in the book in Lord of the Dragon Queen, and like beats the party in like I'm gonna murder this woman or these children unless you come out. It's like there's like 4 cases of that I didn't love that either. Unless you come out and fight me, and in a one-on-one fight, and then like it's a guaranteed loss pretty much for one of your characters, and it's supposed to make them like hate this cult, but this character isn't. It's like there were too many pieces on the board.
Yeah. But I think that's another way they do it. And it's like, how am I supposed to use all this stuff? And I think maybe their intent is like, you only use like one and you pick, but it doesn't suggest that at all. It's like, it just assumes you kind of figure out how to use it on your own without help.
And it's fucking confusing because like, that was why I felt like I had to read and have all of it in my head and know what I could cut out. Cause I was like, oh, okay, this character, I assume they're setting this character up to be a big deal, but then they just show up 2 adventures later and then get killed.
Right.
Which I was like, that seems like kind of a weak payoff for them being set up as this like end of the first episode, essentially unbeatable antagonist. Is like, that's your season 1 villain at least. You know, that's not your killed 2 episodes later.
Yeah.
I guess I'm also thinking about this a lot of it in terms of like television, because I think that is like a good.
I keep finding that the more we do this, the more it seems that good storytelling and tricks that storytellers have learned to write are good ways to relate with things. Like what I keep coming back to is, and the Lazy Dungeon Master Guide touched on this, but is like the idea that NPCs are basically everything to the game. You can build up a map, but it's really the NPC. And that is a real TV concept, because like you can have the bank take away your house, but the bank doesn't take your house. A guy that says they're the bank. Yeah.
And you bury his body in the old sinkhole.
Right. And he's the guy that has a weird accent or a weird mannerism.
Sir, you do not fuck the future. The future fucks you.
And yeah, exactly. And so it's like these are all characters that imply the concepts we're trying to tell the story about.
Exactly.
But you need the characters to be the voice of that. And to that extent, if you're not using the characters as your NPCs as the through line and your main tool to do anything in the game or to relate to your players, you're kind of missing the point. I mean, you know, in D&D, there's ways that locations and monsters can have, in Magic, can have similar interactions. But a lot of times, those, when they're being good, they function kind of like an NPC or something.
Yeah,
that they have character.
I think a monster that doesn't talk is the hardest thing for me to write. Is one that like doesn't have. I think that is why like every time we do almost every time we do Aminals, I'm like, okay, and what they're trying, what they're trying to do is this, and like their goal is this. I'm like, oh, this is what they want, and it's like that, unless like. Except the world worm that just goes through everything, but that I find fascinating because it's the exception. It's the complete opposite. Is the motivationless, pure alien and nothing intelligence, which is neat. So I have these 3 locations. I have these 3 factions, and for each faction, I've come up with one NPC.
Right.
Because I'm like, they need somebody to represent this. They can't just be like, well, there's this church in town that's bad. It's like, you need somebody who's there, who's
being bad.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, so this is a pretty neat idea, I think.
Yeah.
The ultimate payoff was that this guy, I've been listening to the Heaven's Gate podcast, and that was really good. But it got me in a cultish frame of mind. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I like this cult a lot better than the cult that's in this pre-prepared material. So I'm gonna use some of this. So the guy was secretly a bard. He was using the windmill as his spellcasting focus because he had modified he had added this extra windmill spike that made it whistle lightly just a little bit. And so when he put his hand on the turning pole of the millstone, he could cast over a huge area. And he had a fey presence too that he could use. And so he was able to mind control a few people at a time in a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
and also have a general air of charisma, which was enough to turn the whole crowd to
Right.
doing like horrible things. Because like, and I was like, oh right, because that's all you need to actually turn a town
Sure.
of otherwise decent people crazy, is like this much influence
Yeah.
over and being isolated,
Mhm.
and like removing the the competing, like he got rid of the competing religion. He just like, so they end up fighting this guy. They do some cool stuff, because I'm like, okay, I know that he's controlling these people. There's a crowd of like 30 that are under his sway. I wonder what they'll do. And I sent them a text at the beginning of the day, like the morning of the day we were going to play, and I was like, okay, you've woken up. I need 3 things from you. Just have these in mind when you come.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you before you came to this town? What were you arrested for? Like, why are you in jail? And what's one thing that they took from you that you would not leave town without getting back?
Mm-hmm.
So they had motivation, and they were thinking about the characters. They were thinking about some physical object that ties back into motivation and story. I found that like an object can really inspire, like the tokens. There's like the token thing in 5th edition, like a token table you roll and you get some kind of weird object.
Right. Trinket.
Yeah, trinkets, right. I find that really inspires role-playing. Like, people get really excited about just like, oh, I have a weird red feather.
Yeah.
Will do much more than like, you are the last son of the house of Raylor and your blood is, whatever. It's just even if it's not a physical object they have in reality, people understand having something more than they understand being something that they're not.
Right.
So it went really well.
Yeah.
They ended up setting I had given the monk who was like in jail with them, his holy symbol had been taken. I was like, hey, I can help you guys if you get me another holy symbol. There's a temple of Kalimvor here. If you can get that back for me, I'll be able to help. So they go and they get that, and they find the body of the priest, and they learn, and then there's a minor encounter there. They end up going with the guy. They end up setting a bar on fire, which will draw the people who are the church away, and then they're able to ambush the guy and like demand that he, find out what the deal is, and he's awful, so they kill him. They find his, and at the end I'm like, oh, and you find his journal. And I at this point I have no idea what comes next.
Sure.
I just am trusting that between then and next week
I'll have an idea.
Yeah, based on what has happened. And it was really, I was like, okay, I just have this journal as a hook. And one of my characters like, oh, okay, I'll give that to this cop. It's like the one who had arrested us, who is now no longer mind controlled, because then they could solve it. And then she gave it to the cop like twice, and I kept having to be like, I finally had to be like, you might need that,
Right.
actually, as a matter of fact. And it was the only time that I like stepped in like, hey, actually,
Sure.
guys, you are going to maybe need that. And one of them picked up on it and then pickpocketed it back. But
That's
it was really,
cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Cohen.
Hey, Spencer.
How often does this happen to you? You're going to the bakery and a doppelganger steals all your clothes.
Oh, like pretty often.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he shows up, dick swinging like a country ham on the end of a big hook.
Well, I
And-
was going to do a commercial for this Magic Baseball bat, but let's actually just talk about this for a while.
Yeah, so he comes up, he smacks me around with his cock, and then
Okay.
and then I'm like, man, this is taking on a weird energy, and it's a dream I'm having.
Whoa.
But-
So does this happen to you all the time or not?
Well, in my dreams, I would say the amount is non-zero.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In these dreams, what does the doppelganger look like?
Spencer, he looks like me.
Oh, I was
It's
picturing,
a doppelganger.
I was picturing, in the natural state, a doppelganger.
Oh, well then I wouldn't know it for a doppelganger. I suppose I would know it for like a weird, fleshy nothing person.
Right.
I always find it's weird that doppelgangers have like resting forms at all.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea, but although that also makes sense. I'm playing a changeling in a campaign that I'm playing in.
Right, which are like they're like a bit of a watered down doppelganger in terms of bloodline, right?
Yeah, they can like I think it's from Ravnica.
I think it's from Eberron.
Oh, you're right. Those are different.
Hercules, magic bat. Use the promo code Goblin Flakes.
Yeah, take it into your dreams. So for the second session, I was like, okay, I want them to go. I want them to. I don't want this journal to just. I ended up using when I said it was a journal, one of them joked that it was a bullet journal, and I was like, yes, it is. And then in the week between those sessions, I made like a full bullet journal, which are like these like life hacky, Instagram friendly things.
It's a trendy way of collecting thoughts and such.
Yeah, I may post some pictures of it. We might.
Oh yeah.
Because I looked up like bullet journal inspo, and like what do people have in their bullet journals, and it's so I was able to like speckle clues throughout, and then on the last page, basically just like I said, the thing that is happening is that VG. And they ended, so they spend like 5 or 10 minutes poring over this and figuring it out, and like, but okay, it seems like we got to go to VG by this time, and they're like, oh, what's VG? And I was like, well, and I pull out a map. I'm like, it could be one of three things. Mm-hmm. It could be the Velvet Grove, and then I gave it like a description. It could be the Victor's Grave, or it could be the Vineyard of Grief. And I had like an NPC. And some like I had like a villain and a sympathetic NPC, and like the rough ideas of an encounter and some environmental stuff ready for each of these three locations. And that is, I had all three ready for this session. Still took me much less time than previously I've spent planning like one session.
Right.
Planning the rough sketches of three took so much less time, and I felt so much more free in the moment to do stuff. Mm-hmm. Like they went to this like grove, and all I had was like, oh, it's this grove where the leaves grow black, and the underbrush is so thick that it grows and dies so quickly that when you walk, it makes no sound. Like footsteps make no sound here. Mm-hmm. And they were really enchanted by the description. And they end up going there. I had like, oh, maybe a dryad will show up if they get in trouble. If this fight is too much, because I'm having them fight like a were-rat and his two rats. Mm-hmm. So that I could do the reveal, when he transforms. And one of them ends up pissing off the dryad by carving her, like, by doing like her patron symbol in blood on a tree. The dryad comes out and is antagonistic, but they're able to like convince her. And then I ended up making this dryad like a much bigger deal than I intended to. Yeah. And like I think now she might be a major part of the campaign.
Great.
Like she's like, oh, she's actually the spirit of all of these trees, this entire grove, and is like thousands of years old. Because I was like, oh shit, I need to give rough direction to these characters, because they didn't end up like interrogating this guy or getting information out of him. Because I was more interested in this dryad, I guess, and they were too. And there was this really cool part where Kate's character did Kate actually brought a tarot deck and did like a reading. Uh-huh. And that was like, I had the dryad like she did the reading for the party, Kate's character, and then I had the dryad like give her own interpretation, like, well, this is what this means, this is who, and tied it into the campaign at large.
Right.
Like, this was your past, this is what you got to worry about in the future. And then I was able to like give like some rough notes to like the major main antagonist, and all of it's real rough and loose.
But it sounds like people are enjoying it.
They're enjoying it a lot. And the best part is, because I had prepared those three locations they could go to, I don't have to do anything for the next 2 times we play.
Right.
Because they know that they have to go to one of these other 2 places.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, it really sounds like you're using the lessons taught to you by Sly Flourish, the lazy dungeon master, and you can too.
Yeah, I guess I gushed a lot about how much fun I'm having, but I thought it might be a good counterpoint to last time when I was complaining about how little fun I was having.
Oh yeah, I think it was, and I think it will be good.
It looks like.
Mastery is manual.
At mastermanualpod@gmail.com. At
Oh,
mastermanual on Twitter, on Instagram.
You booked it again.
Looks like we booked it again.
Okay.